episode 10.
How do you think that does your coaching knowledge and coaching type of prescription for athletes, how much does it evolve in terms of time?
What does that mean, evolve in terms of time?
Like, how much different was your training prescription in, let's say, 2 years ago compared to nowadays?
Oh yeah, yeah. Compared to, I would say, just as a general statement, I would say I prescribe a lot more, testing with regards to squatting, deadlifting, snatching, and clean and jerking. Mostly because I didn't have a really good handle on how to progress them and how to prescribe the correct assistance work to actually make those lifts better. So I prescribe more testing with regards to that, like snatch, work to a single for the day, clean and jerk, work to a single, front squat, 5 tough sets of 5 at whatever tempo, and then whatever. Same with the deadlift, just like more kind of intensive sets. Now I would say main difference with that stuff is I control the intensity way more. I control how hard I want people to go because I kind of want to control them all the time, and I want control of everything. And when I tell them to go hard on the conditioning work, I want them to go hard. When I tell them I want them to go easy, I want them to go easy. When I want squatting done, generally now I always prescribe the percentage that I want done based on me knowing the person, knowing their max. I usually do that now because I found good success with that in trying to control people's efforts. With regards to the work capacity stuff, I would say I'm much more creative. I have more options with designing aerobic training sessions now. Just comparatively to like following the classic in the CCP stuff, right? The MAP 1 to 10 stuff. Like it's 30 and 30 on, 30 recovery, 1 on, 1 recovery, that kind of stuff. I have many more variations that I use for work rest stuff. But still, compared to even back then, most of the prescriptions I gave were always work rest. It was always sets of stuff. Whether it be like 30-second efforts recovery, 2-minute efforts recovery, 5-minute efforts recovery, whatever. It was always work recovery. Always focusing on quality work, building capacity, recover, different scenario, do it again. So with that, like I said, I'd say I have more options, and I prescribe different variations of that now, much more frequently. Overall, I prescribe much more gymnastic training, much more gymnastic volume.
Like in general?
In general, just a lot more of that. I prescribe more lower intensity work now than I used to. I prescribe way more core work than I used to. I actually make it a goal of mine to never prescribe GH sit-ups or sit-ups, or very rarely. Sometimes I put GH sit-ups in for people because I want to see if they can do them without getting hurt or without having any issues, but generally I don't prescribe GH sit-ups or sit-ups in any form. I used to before because I thought it was needed to do it, but that's not so.
Can you explain why not?
I really believe what Stuart McGill says, and he says that every time you do the extension flexion motion with sit-ups, all he thinks of it as you're literally just one by one, you're taking away longevity from the athlete. Every single time you do it. That's the way he thinks of it. Every time you do it, you're taking away capacity and longevity from them by doing that. Because they're going to need that spine for a long time. So it's like, if you don't need to do that stuff, don't do it. And along that side, I think that's I think it's a ridiculous movement to have in testing and fitness testing. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever. But then, and also, with regards to the anaerobic or lactic work, I prescribe that a lot differently now than I used to. I used to prescribe a lot more mixed work, like chest to bar pull-ups and thrusters, and power cleans and burpees and whatever. It's much more cyclical work now, just rowing, biking, maybe some burpees, sled work, hill sprints. Because I think with that, all you're really looking for is the dose response from it. You just want, like, you want that that area or that muscle group or that person just completely filled with lactate and hydrogen. You want that system just engorged in that. And I think it's a much lower load on the neuromuscular system, and obviously the central nervous system to recover from by doing it that way, as opposed to prescribing high loads and lots of eccentric and concentric motions, which can just have a much longer downtime. And that type of training anyway is already really hard to recover from. So yeah, I prescribe much less of that than I do now. Yeah.
What made you do that change and realize you got some room for improvement and for changes?
I would say mostly educating myself, and along with trial and error, getting feedback from people, seeing people's results, and just talking with them about it, being like, you know, this is good for specific preparation, like the lactic stuff, like the 60-second all out with mixed modal work, 6 minutes rest times 3 to 5 sets. It made sense in certain scenarios, but when the scenarios are unknown, and when the scenarios are unknown, it doesn't really make sense to me anymore to do it like that. Like if you know you're going to have to do 21-15-9 chest to bar pull-ups and thrusters, or pull-ups or thrusters chest to bar pull-ups, and it's going to knock you out, that makes sense to do specific work on that. But if you're doing that and thinking it's going to help with a row sprint, I don't know. I'm not sure of that. So I go with the lesser of the two evils with regards from what I think is from the recovery standpoint, and I just pick rowing, biking, hill sprints, or sled sprints as that kind of work. Especially with the more elite people, the higher volume training. I don't think you can have one session that takes that much out of a person and do that repeatedly.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, I prescribe more percentage and more specific loading and more assistance work and more controlled loading on snatch, clean and jerk, front squat, back squat, deadlift, because I want control. The aerobic conditioning work, I prescribe way more lower intensity stuff, and I prescribe a lot more variations and scenarios of the more intense work. I prescribe way more static bracing core work, much more frequently, and the anaerobic work, that kind of stuff, is usually fits into mostly cyclical rowing, biking, hill sprints, and prowler sprints. That's the main differences over probably the last 2 to 3 years.
And could you explain who is Stuart McGill?
Stuart McGill?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a Canadian researcher in spinal health. He works with biomechanics of the spine. He always I think he joked that his profession is herniating pig spines. Yeah, so that's all his research is fixated on how the spine functions, right? How the human spine functions. I'm sure there's some people that would just not agree with some of his stuff, which I probably, if I investigated enough, I probably wouldn't agree with him either. And I don't look to him for training advice by any means. I look to him for information, and then I decide what I want. But I think he's a reputable source, and I like the way he explains his philosophy, and I agree with that.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
Good.